Well, good morning. I missed you last week. I was away on our Deacon retreat at St. Alphonsus in Long Branch, and it was beautiful. If you've ever been there, it's very rewarding. Today is about change. I have a story about change for someone. His name was Harold Hughes, and at one point in his life, he was the governor of Iowa, and he also was a U.S. senator in his life, very successful. But he wrote an autobiography, and in that biography, he says in his younger years, he was a drunk, a liar, and a cheat. And at one point in his life, he had wrecked everything, and he was convinced that he had lost it all. So one night, he prepared to kill himself, actually, with a gun. And he was about to pull the trigger, and suddenly he recalled the Bible saying what was wrong to kill one's life. And so he decided to explain to God. I'm going to explain to God, he says, why he was doing such a terrible thing. He knelt down on that cold tile floor in that bathroom, and he rested his head against the rim of that tub. And he talked to God, sobbing as he did. And something happened to him he never experienced in his life, as he put it in his biography. A warm peace seemed to settle within him. His sins seemed to evaporate, and God seemed to reach down and touch him. Like a stricken child lost in a storm, and all of a sudden he stumbled, he felt in the warm arms of my Father. Kneeling on that bathroom floor, he gave himself to God totally. He said, "Whatever you ask of me, Father, I will do." That remarkable experience was the beginning of a complete conversion of a gentleman by the name of Harold Hughes. You see, 10 years later, he was elected the governor of Iowa. 17 years later, he was elected to the U.S. State Senate. And finally, when he did retire, he worked extensively at the alcohol and drug-related programs. See, the story of Harold Hughes bears a striking resemblance to the story of Zacchaeus in today's gospel. It's a story of someone who went from the life of sin to the life of service. It's a story of someone who opened his heart to God, and that his heart was filled with joy, great joy, that he never dreamed possible. The story of these two men illustrates something that we tend to forget. It illustrates a dramatic way that Jesus wants to enter in all of our lives and change them for the better, just as he did with you. He leaves us free to decide. That brings us, all of us here, our own personal lives. Jesus often walks into our lives. Sometimes we don't even realize it, as he did in those two gentlemen. And when he does, he needs only to reach out to him. That's all we need to do, is to reach out to him. And he will do for us what he did for them. This raises a question: when can we be sure that Jesus is walking in our lives? Well, there are 3 times that we know for sure, based on Jesus Christ. The first is the scriptures that are read at Mass. Jesus assured his disciples, "Whoever listens to you, listens to me." So Jesus is walking into our lives right now in a special way in this church as we listen to the scriptures. And the second time Jesus walks into our lives is the liturgy of the Eucharist. Again, Jesus said, "Whoever eats my flesh, drinks my blood, remains in me, and I in him." So the second time we walks into our life in a special way is the liturgy of the Eucharist, which will be celebrated just a few minutes from now. And finally, Jesus walks into our lives in a special way as we encounter the needy brothers and sisters that are around us. Once again, Jesus said, "Whoever does for one of these does for me." And so there are 3 times especially when we can be sure Jesus is in our lives: the liturgy of the Word, liturgy of the Eucharist and we encounter our needy brother and sister. All these 3 times, Jesus walks into our lives just as surely as he did in the lives of Harold Hughes and Zacchaeus. And when this happens, you know what we need to do? We only need to reach out and invite Jesus to be with us. This is the message in today's gospel. This is the celebration of today's liturgy. This is the good news that Jesus Christ wants each one of us to carry with us today as we leave this church. God bless you.